Playing online and on smart devices. Now on London Scottie Radio, it's podcast time. I'm George Matlock.
Welcome to Scottie MOT, the health and wellbeing show from London Scottie Club. Please welcome back Jacky Ash from Ashgate Grooming and Kennels in Fivehead, Somerset. But before we talk about the health of Scotties, let's start with you, Jacky. How are you feeling? Any better?
Yes, I'm a lot better, thank you very much. I'm fully recovered from my COVID.
Okay, fantastic news. So pleased to hear you're okay and back in circulation. So we're now going to turn to Scottie MOT. We've got a couple of questions, or one that actually is a growing topic of interest in the canine world. So this doesn't just affect Scottish Terriers. This could be any breed of dog, really. And we've also got the results of the survey that was carried out about grooming. What kind of groom do Scottie owners go for? And as well as some findings on our Scottie MOT podcast. But all of that coming up a little bit later. In the good traditions of radio, we'll start with that big topic first, which is about Alabama rot. Now, many of you might think that this is something straight out of the south of the United States with a name like that. But vets are actually urging us all in the UK to be vigilant. And they're saying don't panic, but they have confirmed that there have been 2 more cases of deadly Alabama rot in the UK recently. The fatal flesh-eating virus has killed 1 dog a week in 2019 and has now killed 5 dogs in the UK since the start of this year. Experts at Anderson Moore's veterinary specialists in Winchester have released new data which show that the latest 2 canine cases occurred in Bristol and Kingston in Devon. The Animal Hospital has been leading research into Alabama rot since 2012, and it's collating information on all confirmed cases and reports across the country. Now, their experts are saying that, understandably, everyone is very worried about this, but they stress that this is a very rare disease. But they are saying that we need to be vigilant, and that means that we should seek advice from local vets if their dogs develop unexplained skin lesions. Now, Alabama rot has a 90% mortality rate, and puppies with the disease can develop painful sores and kidney damage. But no one knows the cause, and the signs are often difficult to pick out. Now, that's according to a report in the Daily Mirror where we found that particular story. But it's not the only paper that's been reporting, of course, on this particular case. So, Alabama rot. First of all, Jacky, have you heard of it?
Yes, we've heard of it, and it's certainly something which we do watch out for.
Right, okay. And how you're obviously vigilant because you're looking at the dog and you're looking at the skin and the condition of the dog as they come in. So presumably you've a bit of an early warning system. I mean, what are the telltale signs? What are the things that you're looking for that would concern you if there was a case of Alabama rot?
I think the most important thing that everybody needs to look out for is any unexplained lesion, skin lesion on your dogs. Now, that would either be on their feet or on the bottom half of their legs. And it looks very much, as far as I can tell, it looks very much like an ulcer that's building, and it could be swollen and quite red. And and that's the sort of thing that we're looking out for, that when we're bathing a dog or when we're first doing the health checks, when they first come into the salon, the first thing we are always looking for is skin lesions or any sort of puncture wound, any sort of sores, particularly around legs and feet.
Now, it seems, though, from what we understand, that this virus actually enters the dog through the pores of the dog, and then it can spread from there. Whereabouts on the body would you be expecting to see any kind of such contagion?
As I say, on the paws, lower legs. You can also get it around the mouth, as far as I understand. One of the things which certainly the vets are looking at is that when a dog comes back from a walk, the first thing it's going to do is to try and clean itself up. And that's a natural grooming process that all dogs carry out. And if they therefore have the toxin on their legs and feet, they are naturally going to be grooming themselves to clean up their legs and feet and then ingesting the toxin. And that's one of the causes of this vomiting and kidney failure that seems to follow quite quickly.
Right, so it's basically the ingesting of the virus through the mouth, through the natural grooming process that the dog's routine involves.
As far as I can understand, I mean, it is a topic which the vets are not 100% clear on themselves exactly what causes it and how quickly, how it transmits itself. But that's certainly from the research that I've carried out seems to be the way forward, and that's from the vets, which are, as you said in your introduction, there are vets which are specialising in researching this and keeping tabs on what's going on.
Now, Alabama rot, from what we understand, it goes back as far as the 1980s, but it only first arrived in the UK around 2012. At least that's when the first reports were heard about. And this particular specialist that we cited in that report from the newspaper has been monitoring this since that time. So we've got about a decade of data already to go on. But still nobody seems to be any the wiser, either here or across the pond or anywhere else, as to what's actually, where it comes from. Where is this virus emanating from?
No, you're quite right. It started off in greyhounds in the United States, in Alabama, which is obviously why it's got the name it has. I think it's very important that people know that it is very isolated. It is certainly not something which is very common, and it seems to be that you would pick it up from countryside walks. So certainly anybody with dogs walking around towns or local parks, you're very unlikely to pick it up. It does seem to be muddy areas, particularly wooded areas in the countryside.
Right. Okay. Also, I guess it's interesting that this situation has occurred the way that it has. As you're saying, it's more likely to be a rural thing rather than an urban thing. But I guess that while the research has to carry on into what causes it, it can happen to any dog, right? Any dog can actually pick this up. So it must be of considerable concern right across. Okay, Jacky, thank you for talking to us about Alabama rot. Let's turn now to the survey results of our recent study which we did. This is a poll that we conducted last week of members of London Scottie Club, and we asked a couple of questions. So let's start first with the question about what people think about Scottie MOT and other podcasts which London Scottie Radio produces. So first of all, we're really pleased to tell you that more than half of those polled, and I can tell you a third of our membership took part, so a huge thank you to everyone who did participate. More than half of them said that they loved the podcasts, so 56% in fact said that they listened and they liked it. Apparently 32% though said they had not yet got around to listening to our podcast, so hopefully this will now inspire them to do so. And only 5.4% said that they didn't know that podcasts existed. So there you go. I think that's a pat on the back.
That's not bad, is it?
It's really not bad at all. So we're quite pleased with that. That's pretty good feedback. Let's turn now to the big crucial topic. This is one that I know you suggested for the first online poll of our membership. For Scottie MOT, and the topic that you selected was this question, which is, what type of groom does your Scottie dog have? So we asked a total of 5 options. Do they hand strip? Do they hand strip and bath? Do they clip? Do they clip and bath? Or don't they know? Well, you'll be amazed to know that somebody said that they didn't know. So 2.7% said that they didn't know. However, most people were pretty clear about what they have, and a certain trend has developed here. So first of all, hand stripping, which is something that I know you provide at your kennels and grooming service, 10.8% said that they hand strip their dogs. A further 13.5% said hand strip and bath. So that's not too bad. That brings it to around 23%, or around a quarter, I guess. Those who just clip, 5.4%. Those who clip and bath, a whopping 67.5%. That all adds up more or less to 100. So quite clearly, hands down, it is clip and bath that wins the day. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'm not surprised, sadly. I think I said once before, I think when we were chatting, I think when you were actually with your dogs down here, that hand stripping is a dying art. It's not something which a lot of groomers will offer to their clients, because it is, it's a longer process. It's a technique that they have to learn and specialise in, and I'm really not surprised. It does sadden me though, I have to say, because the Scotties would so benefit from being hand stripped.
Yeah, absolutely they would. Well, tell us about the benefits. I mean, I know what they are, but for the benefit of listeners who may think, oh, isn't it cruel plucking fur out of a dog's body? What do you say to that?
Well, we're not plucking, all right. They're not chickens, so we're not trying to pull out, all of the dog's hair. All we're trying to do by hand stripping is we're removing the dead coat that's reached the end of its growing cycle. So if you imagine a piece of hair when it first comes out of the skin follicle, it's all nice and new and it's tightly in there, and as it grows and grows and grows, it's like our own hair. Eventually it falls out. Now, with the terriers, we've got two types of coat. We've got a lovely, thick, dense undercoat, which is a bit like an eiderdown, and that's going to keep us nice and warm in the winter, but it also is going to keep us nice and cool in the summer. And then you've got this thick, very hard coat on top of that, and that's going to shelter us from all the rain and all the snow, and also from the sun's rays, so that we don't get burnt. Okay, so that's what the Scottie is naturally doing with their own coat. What we do as hand stripping is that we're taking off the dead hard coat at the top, and we're not touching that underlayer. So we're letting that just do what it does quite happily. I mean, every now and again it might get a bit thick, so we take a little bit out, but fundamentally we are leaving it alone.
Yeah.
Now, when you clip a dog, what you're doing is that you are interfering with that undercoat, and you're interfering with the whole follicle process of growing hairs. So what's happening is that instead of having those lovely two layers to look after the dog, we've now created one layer. So the hard coat will just die out, it'll just disappear, and you'll end up with a much softer coat, and it'll be very, very thick. And once the process has started, it's not really very easy to get it back, and you're into an 8-week bath and clip cycle, which personally it's fine from a point of view of a dog that's, say, living in certain circumstances where they don't need the protection of their coat, but you are going away from naturally what is a Scottish Terrier.
Right. So in other words, it's okay to clip if you live in a centrally heated house. Okay, so in that case, for those who are reaching for their tissues and regretting that they allowed their groomers to talk them into having a clip because that's what was offered, and let's face it, a lot of people don't have that choice, and you said it yourself. They simply, this is what we offer, it's take it or leave it time,
Absolutely.
So given that, how many of these poor people can we now, and their Scotties, can we rescue? So in other words, when do we get to the point of no return that you can't now switch from clip to hand strip?
I think you probably get away with 1, possibly 2 clips when they're little. Once we've gone beyond that, it would not be kind to the dog to try and get that coat back.
Right, and that's we're talking about 2 clips, separated by about 8 weeks each or something.
About 8 weeks, yes.
Right. So if somebody had a clip, I don't know, in month 1, didn't do it again for 6 months, and didn't do it again for 6 months, would that help, or would that?
Yes. Well, it doesn't really make a great deal of difference on the length of time.
Right. Between
looking at the coat growth, really.
Right.
I mean, the longer you can leave it after it's been clipped, obviously, the better. You know, between hand strips, for instance, we would only really want to do a Scottie 3 times a year, because we want the coat to keep growing. And I think once you've started the clipping process, you've really got to watch that undercoat, because, you know, the dogs will become very uncomfortable quite quickly. I mean, just to put it in context, I mean, if, for instance, not particularly Scotties, because they usually have fantastic coats, but one of the other terrier breeds, the Irish Terrier, for instance, we find in the salon, quite often has a very poor undercoat. And one of the things that we as groomers will do is a one-off clip, because we will encourage the undercoat to immediately start reacting to that clipping process, and it will grow, so that when the dog comes back next time, in say 4 months' time, we should have an undercoat which we can start working on and keep the hand stripping process going. So we do use a clip from Remedial, but I don't want people to sort of think that they've done something terribly wrong by clipping. You haven't. You know, it is a personal choice, and if you've gone down the clipping route and you've got a good groomer, you know, it is fine. It is not too, you know, it's not a bad thing. It's just a personal choice.
Good. Okay. Well, that is reassuring to know. So what you're saying is essentially, one clip, maybe 2 clips are okay. 3 or more, you're really probably you've gone too far. So yes. Kind of three strikes and you're out. Yes, it's what you're saying, basically.
Well, maybe 2.
Okay. And is there a difference, actually, I want to ask you this, between the different kinds of Scotties? Because, of course, we all know they come in black, they also come in Wheaton and in brindle. And I've noticed, for example, with my 2 dogs, one of which is a Wheaton and the other's black, the quality of their coats is rather different. And yet they both more or less started hand stripping from the start.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the Wheaton coat is far more difficult to maintain. You know, the blacks are, I suppose, the easiest from the groomer's point of view. Brindles are lovely to do. The hair just comes out beautifully on a brindle, but I would say the Wheatons are the ones that we need to work hardest on.
Oh dear.
And no, it's just because, you know, and also the way the coat comes, it's difficult to describe, but it grows in a slightly different way. And anybody that wants to learn how to do dog grooming, come down and see us, and we'll teach you all about the coat.
Well, that's right, because you do run courses, don't you, for people who want to do hand stripping themselves?
And it doesn't have to be groomers, you know. I mean, it could be someone that, you know, really would like to learn to do this themselves. But you know, the one thing I would say is, just from what's happened this week, actually, we've had a young Scottie that's come in, and they have been told, don't do anything with that Scottie until it was about 4 or 5 months old. Please don't leave it that long. You know, we need to see those puppies in the salon when they've had those vaccinations. You know, they need to understand about their heads being clipped. They need to understand about the noise of the scissors, and they need to understand about sitting on the table and us starting to pull that coat.
Right.
So don't leave it too long for them. It's just it's much better for them to actually experience the salon early.
Yeah, to get that sort of behaviour, that experience behind them. Right,
yeah,
absolutely.
We don't want them scared to come in and see us.
You mentioned earlier another lovely breed, which is the Irish Terrier. I've got a friend who's lives near me who's got one of these lovely sort of ginger-haired dogs, and he actually does his own hand stripping at home. I know he often tells me that what he does is every 2 weeks or so he will sit on the sofa watching TV, and he will sort of fairly aimlessly do the hand stripping.
Yes.
Not for me to say, but you're an expert. Obviously, you don't know the technique he's using or whether he's been professionally trained or not. And I don't know, doubt actually that he has any particular training. He's probably just seen something on YouTube and followed that. But is he doing anything that that's wrong? Or with that sort of undercoat that you said is quite weak in the case of Irish Terriers?
If anything, he's doing exactly the right thing. Because if we can roll the coat And by that we mean we're constantly working on it. You're never taking off the entire top coat. So when you take your dog to, or when you bring your dogs to us, for instance, we have to take off the most of that top coat. And they go home, quite short, quite almost down to the undercoat. And what your friend is doing is taking out the bits that are sticking up, the bits that have really blown, the bits that want to come out on their own and are shouting and saying, please pull me out, but he's leaving the ones that are still nicely knitted together. So his dog will never look as if it's been completely trimmed. It'll always look as if it's just naturally neat and tidy.
So it's almost a bit like in the gardening world, topiary. I mean, you're kind of sculpting and keeping the line of the coat correct and straight.
Absolutely.
The bits that stick out.
That's why we love teaching people to groom their own dogs, because you can go away, you can in the evening sit there and, pull those few hairs out which are wanting to come out, and your dog will just look fabulous, and the bond that you get with your dog doing it is just phenomenal. They so love it. I can't tell you how much they enjoy being on the table, having it done.
Great. So it's actually a great bonding exercise as well. Never thought of it in those terms, actually.
We've got a fox terrier that comes in, and we have to do that with a knife rather than our fingers because the coat is so tough. And he is asleep on the table within about 20 minutes. I've got some beautiful, lovely pictures and videos of him absolutely snoring his head off, having his coat pulled out, and we use that as an example of this is how you do it properly. Your dog should enjoy this process.
So in that case, for people who are now budgeting and thinking about, switching to hand stripping, what would you say in terms of the regularity? How often should they bring their Scotties to you, ideally?
We would certainly want to see them no less than 3 times a year.
Right, okay. So every 4 months is a good enough gap?
About every 4 months is probably the correct gap, unless you're doing maintaining at home. If you are doing maintaining at home between grooms, you can go longer. And we do have customers that, will do some of the work at home and then they come down to us, once every, say, 7-8 months just for a complete reshape, and to take out the bits that they're struggling with, because some are harder than others to shape, and you've got to know a little bit of what you're doing, and they just come down to us when they need us.
And of course there's some parts of the body that just don't lend themselves to hand stripping, so like the head, for example, you would be looking to use clipping presumably for that, to shave that down.
I mean, you clip the head, you clip the ears, and down the front on the chest we clip. But the hardest bit for the hand stripping is really on the top of the neck. That's the bit which puts most people off, because you do have to use a more experienced technique to get that out without hurting the dog.
Wow. Okay, a lot of things to consider, but you do offer the courses, so if people want to know more, they should get in touch, and you can actually use the form online to where you can pose a question. You can also inquire if you would like more information from Jacky about that service. It's down in Somerset, folks, so if you're in that part of the world, then it's definitely well worth an investment on your part to go to the course.
One of the things I do want to just let you know about is that I'm thinking, I haven't done it yet, but I am thinking of perhaps doing like a webinar training on Scottie brushing, maintaining, and that may be something which, if I do, obviously I'll let you know about, because your members might be interested in joining in on.
Absolutely. Well, we'd love to take a sample of that and just put a sample of it online so that people can see how you do it and what they can expect.
Again, perhaps you could ask ask the listeners, is that something that they would find helpful? What bits of looking after Scotties are they finding difficult?
Oh, I don't need to ask them. I would find it very useful. I think we can short circuit this conversation. You've already got your first customer.
Okay, fair enough. I'll get recording.
Well, it sounds like a great idea. And now that London Scottie Club has actually gone beyond London, we are now national since March. We welcome members from all over the country, and we've seen quite a few members joining from places like Stex, the charity for Scottish Terriers. I have to say that we'd be delighted, and I'm sure many of our listeners would also be delighted to tune in to a webinar. So thank you very much for thinking about that. I think that's a great initiative on your part. Okay, Jacky, well, just finally, a quick reminder really to everyone that if you've got a question for Scottie MOT, as I mentioned earlier, you don't have to even be a London Scottie Club member, although Lord knows why you wouldn't want to join. After all, it is free. Anyone in the UK can become a member, and for overseas listeners, we offer what's called honorary membership. So visit scottie.scot, and from there you can send your question using our online form and attach a photo or short video if you think that would help us looking into your Scottie's problem. Just visit the dedicated page on scottie.scot. That's Scottie spelt with a double T-I-E, right? Scottie.scot. Nice and easy to remember. The show will be back in 2 weeks. We'll have Kath Marchbank at that particular juncture. In the meantime, Jacky Ash, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad you're feeling better, and it's great to have you back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, as always.
And to all our listeners, wishing you all very healthy Scotties.
Thanks for listening to London Scottie Radio. This and all our podcasts are available online at londonscottie.club. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe to us from your favourite podcast player app. Also visit us on YouTube for fun videos. And if you have a Scottish Terrier in London or nearby, be sure to join us.